So first, let's talk a little bit about how you became a secretary with the State Department and what year, because that was a very pivotal time for Black people in this country. You didn't really see a lot of Black people in those types of positions. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Actually, it was 1962 when I went into the Foreign Service, but I started when I was 20, and I went in at age 20 and left Philadelphia, which is where I was born, 3 girls and 1 boy. Everybody talked all the time, thought they could be anything they wanted to be. So that's what I felt. I said, my mom can talk all over the world, all on the East Coast. My uncle can talk, my brother can talk and dance. I want to do something like that. I don't want to be a beautician. We had a lot of them in my family, 4 or 5. So I ended up moving from Philadelphia. I worked in Philadelphia for 1 year at the Philadelphia General Hospital in the psychiatric unit. It was quite an experience, to say the least. And I would walk over to the elevator and they would have a body on one of those dollies or whatever they call them. I said, this is not going to work. I've got to do something different. Well, I have a girlfriend named Barbara Howard. She had two parents that both worked for the government. They all African American. And the government told her that she could not work there in a household with 3 people working for the government. So she decided to go in the Foreign Service. But we worked every other week while we were in high school. And when we finished, I ended up getting letters from her telling me about, she's not that exciting, but to me it was exciting. She's not an exciting person. She's very calm, very quiet, so different from me. And she fell in love over there. But she found out that the man she wanted to come and marry and come to the States, she went to the office in DC, the writing school, and she was in the Middle East, and she found out that they didn't want to hire him because he was Black. And she's Black. She's Black, and he's from Cairo. So she decided she never got married. That's who she wanted to marry. And I stayed in the Foreign Service for 15 years. I worked for the State Department. My first assignment was Sao Paulo, Brazil. I studied there. Well, I had to wait till I turned 21, so I moved to DC and worked there a year. And worked on the Balkan desk, Balkan affairs, that's what we call them. Yugoslavia, Albania, those countries. Did I go to all those countries? I think I did. I know I went to Yugoslavia, and I went to Albania. But the rest of them, I know what happened. When I got to NATO, the NATO, after I got to Paris.
Okay, you're jumping ahead. We're gonna back up.
Well, I know why I couldn't go to some of those countries that I wanted to go to, because I was at NATO headquarters and it was part of the 14 nations.
Mm-hmm.
And so they wouldn't allow me to go there. So I ended up missing Germany and several other countries because of that, because of the Balkan countries.
Okay.
And then when they tore the wall down, I can go there now.
Well, but let's back up to the
Okay.
beginning. Brazil,
Sao Paulo.
Right,
Brazil.
Sao Paulo was your first
assignment.
Okay. So now, so when you, so just kind of give us a lay of the land though. So as a secretary, you worked for, was it an ambassador, or did you work for, who was your boss?
He was in charge of passport problems.
Okay.
The passport office.
Mm-hmm.
And they, of course, at that time, were not interested in having any people of color. Well, I shouldn't say that because there were people of color there, but African Americans they didn't want any African-looking Brazilians coming to America. So they put a stop to it. And they put me in the middle of it because I could remember everything. When somebody came there to ask for a passport, they said, did he come here 2 weeks ago or a month ago? And they called me in the room, called me out there to the desk and said, Janyce, Miss Hughes, Janyce, whatever they call me, Janyce. did this young lady or this young man come in here a couple months ago looking for a passport? I said, yes. They said, well, let's just nix it. He can't have a passport. She can't have a passport. Then they had a young man that was Portuguese, who spoke Portuguese. They'd send him out to the bars, checking on these people to make sure they shouldn't be allowed in America, because they were trying to come and get a passport and go to the States. And they said they were alcoholics. They just did everything they could to keep them from being able to come. So,
Kind of like now.
kind of like, no, just like now.
Mm-hmm.
Just like now. And they thought, they couldn't tell what I was. Because I had been in DC, and District of Columbia, they thought I was a Colombian. Well,
Who did? The people in Brazil. Okay.
but the Goodwill tour of 2 young men came from the United States, from the State Department. They didn't drink, but we were out one night having fun. They were leaving the next day. They had come there, and I took them out. And they didn't drink anything. I had 1 beer, and the African-American looking Brazilian girl and I had a beer together. She drank half, and I was driving. Well, I turned up a one-way street that had just been changed, and they stopped my car, put us in jail, wouldn't let me call for purposes that we had of the right to when we were overseas visiting or working, especially if we're working.
And they knew you were American?
No, they thought I was Colombian. They looked at my passport.
Oh, because it's a District of Columbia.
District of Columbia. So they put me in jail, and they made me stay overnight. When I got out, I was getting ready to go to Paris. So what I did was call. I was leaving in a couple of days. So when I got to Paris, I called the embassy, the Brazilian embassy in Paris, and I got my report that I wrote up translated into Portuguese and sent it back, and those men were fired from their jobs, and that was the end of that. But during that time, while I was there, I sambaed, I ate everything I could, I danced with everybody I could, I met every man I could, I did everything I could do. And I went to see Pelé. I met him. He was a famous football player, as they called it back then in Portuguese. And I met Arthur Ashe. He came to see us at the Circle Horse Hippique, which is a riding club, which is across the street from the Consulate General where I worked. I met so many fabulous people that came there, and they loved Brazil like they love Atlanta. Everybody comes here now. And it was like that to me, and I was only 21 at the time. So I was having just a ball, and I thought it was so fine. And I stayed there 2 years. We had an ambassador, well, that was in Vietnam. We had, when I left there, I took the cruise ship. Instead of flying, I took a ship, and came back to the United States and landed in New York.
Now let's back up before we leave Brazil, though. So,
Okay.
How did you feel about them really not wanting to allow Afro-Brazilians to come into the country? So how did that make you feel as a member of the State Department,
I was
and as a
devastated.
Black member?
But they treated me poorly as well. They put me in jail for nothing.
Well, the Brazilians did, but how did the Americans treat you?
The Americans basically,
Because this was 1962,
right,
63.
they treated me well. They treated me well, except the secretary, she looked Caucasian. She was in about her 50s, and she would go out with me shopping, to clubs. Neither one. One of the white ladies there from Brazil, from England, we would go shopping together, and they would think that the two of us, that when I went separately with them, they would think I was their maid. And I just act like, I said, I don't speak English. I only speak English. Don't talk to me. And I'm nobody's maid, and I never will be. So the lady, the younger lady, we would go to different parties, ambassador's house, wherever, and she would never be near me. She was close to me and asked me questions about a lot of things in the passport office. But because she was the secretary for the passport office as well, just like me. And she said, she was just very, very unkind to me.
So did you find a kinship with the Brazilian people, the Afro-Brazilian people?
The ones that weren't afraid to talk to me because they felt like they would go to jail. I have a family that adopted me, the Martins family. And Carlos Alberto Martins was the only black Brazilian at the University of Sao Paulo. The only one. And I went to eat with them when I wasn't out of town or shopping or doing whatever. And their dish was the feijoada completa. And that dish was so good. And every day they had it in the various parts of the city. So you could get it anywhere. And it had pork, chicken, and it was with rice. And it was so good. Oh my God.
That's a good dish, or you still
I know how to make it.
reminiscing back to 1962?
I know how to make it.
Oh, okay.
I learned how to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got Carlos to text it to me on the computer, the recipe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I started making it.
So you told me the other day that you landed in Sao Paulo the day that Kennedy was assassinated.
Yes.
So what was that energy like? And how were you feeling? Like, did you feel a level of uneasiness, with the assassination of the American president, and then just kind of being outside of the United States and then out in the world?
Well, the day I landed, he was assassinated. And when I got there, I told him, don't take me to your house to eat. I don't want to eat with you. I just want to walk the streets and see what's going on. I didn't know it at the time that Kennedy had been assassinated. So there was a newsstand on the corner of the hotel where I was staying. And they said, El Muerte, the newspaper said El Presidente e Muerte. Well, I knew what that was because I just learned some Portuguese a little bit at the State Department. And I said, what are you talking about? And I fell out in the streets. I was so upset. But it was a good thing and a bad thing. Because out of that, I learned that it's better to know where you're going than to try to figure it out. And I knew where I was going. I wasn't going anywhere, but we were both, the three of us landed around the same time. Instead of staying in the hotel again, we stayed in the ambassador's, the deputy person of that embassy, of the consulate general, that's what it was called. And we stayed in his house until after the Christmas holidays. And a German lady cooked our food. And we had holiday fun there and enjoyed each other and really had a wonderful time.
So how are y'all living in Brazil?
Very well.
It sounds like it.
They had, the money changed so often, and I could get more money every time. They had these 10 offensives, sort of like Vietnam had only one, but they had one like every 3 weeks.
Right.
And it was always money, 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 and everybody danced and drank liquor and partied every day, all day long.
Sounds like Brazil.
Sounds like Brazil.
So, okay, so then you left Brazil and you went to Paris.
Right. I came back to the United States by ship, and I learned a lot about the Brazilians on the ship, and I won every contest they had, the dance contest, the food contest, you name it, I was winning it. And I don't know why people always gravitate to me. I can't figure that out, but I've been trying. Sometimes it's good news, and sometimes it's not good news. I don't need to hear it. That's too much information for me. Sometimes it makes me almost crazy because I like to help people and get them where they're supposed to be, here and here. And sometimes it don't work.
Well, with that said, working for the State Department, where you were constantly dealing with the U.S. interest
Right.
in a country which was not always
That good.
for the people in that country.
And still,
So how did you kind of juggle that and balance that with your desire to be helpful, understanding that we're putting forth a certain level of policy that is very unhelpful to the people living there?
I did my level best. That's what my grandmother used to say. Just do your level best.
What were some of the...
And my level best, excuse me,
No, go ahead.
was to look to those people and share the love that they needed to have and the understanding that you don't, we had the first African American Miss Guanabara Bay from Rio, and she was of African descent. And so she was the first woman that ever had that job. We couldn't figure that out. And she was a relative to the family that I had adopted me. So of course I got the magazine, I still have it. I had the magazine, I keep everything. So you must know that I've got a museum in my house. However, they were not as kind to me as I would have liked. Even some of the Caucasians. In every place I was. And some of the people of the country and the people that I know, that I worked with, they weren't too happy. But I didn't care because I just did my work. I did it fast. I did it perfect. Well, I don't want to say I'm perfect because that. I hate when somebody say they're perfect. If you're perfect, you don't need to be in Jesus' name. You don't need to do anything. Perfect is not a word that I use that much.
And that's good because it's not something that humans are that much.
Exactly. And so I feel like they were as kind as they knew how to be. And I helped them to learn a little bit more about African Americans and how we are.
So when you were in these spaces, do you remember any of the policies that the United States was putting forth? I mean, because you've been to, let's just name the places that you were. So you were in Brazil, you were in Paris, you were in
Vietnam. Those are my 3 assignments.
Okay.
I traveled many other places while I was in those countries.
Right. So within the workspace, were there moments when, just kind of, do you remember any of the things that, outside of no Brazilians can come to the United States, but anything that were policies that were being put forth by the United States that impacted the people?
Well, they sent those guys down there twice. They came twice. They came to photo map the Brazil from the air. And all of the girls, the young ladies that were working there, I don't know what ages they were, but some of about my age and a little older than me, they went crazy. And they had a party. And it was a true party. I wasn't in the party.
I'm afraid to ask what kind of party that was.
It was a real party. It was a real party. I went there and I talked to those men and I told them, even the ones that got turned down, don't feel bad. You're gonna get there. But you gotta take your time and figure out what to do next. And I'm gonna help you do it. Because I'm gonna talk to you and I'm gonna teach you a few things that I learned to get where I am. Because I had no
These were
job.
African American men.
These were men in Brazil. These were Brazilian men.
Oh, okay.
That
So when you
were-
said getting turned down for their visas
For
or
their visas.
passports to get to, okay.
But I told them, I said, the reason I'm in the Foreign Service is because I'm nosy and I'm curious. But I couldn't get a job in Philadelphia as a secretary or anything. And when I finished high school, I wanted to work. So that's how I ended up in the Foreign Service, because I found out that there was an avenue for me to do that. I liked my job where I was. I was with the psychiatric department ward at Philadelphia General Hospital, but I didn't really want to stay there. So I took my girlfriend's advice and joined the Foreign Service. And I loved that job that I had. But I didn't want to stay there because that wasn't, I wanted to be out.
Right, right. So in your being out in the world, and so this was, most of this took place in the 60s and the early 70s,
Right.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how, with everything that was going on, I mean, the world was at least the world here was pretty explosive
Exactly.
in terms of Black people at that time. How did any of that translate in the work that you were doing, especially in Vietnam with so many Black soldiers, kind of what were those types of conversations about? Was there a lot of conversation about what was going on here with civil rights movement?
Yes, it was.
So kind of talk to me a little bit about how people that were over there felt about what was going on over here.
They were, well, before I went overseas, actually, I worked with Intercultural Family Services, and we helped people come to the United States. And they were told that we were like dogs and we had a tail. So we were trying to find people in high school that were unique and special in their own way, in their studies. And we found out that these young people knew nothing about what they had told them. They just didn't want to be bothered with any African Americans because they had been told these different things about us. And so when I got there, I said, listen, this is a new time and a new day. We're not going back that way. The Americans don't go for that. We got a new attitude. We got a new attitude. We're going to get this thing straight. And I wrote down several things that were happening in America. I told them about how Blacks couldn't find jobs. They didn't have, their families didn't have medical care. And then I went over those things and said, you're going to get it here because I'm going to help you get it. And that's what I did only in my extra work. That was my fun work. I worked hard on my job. I was serious about my work. And they didn't like that either.
So when you said that you helped them get it there, was that the people that lived there or were that African Americans that were staying there?
No, people that lived there.
Okay, so then in terms of, going back to everything that was happening in this country, how were your superiors, how were they kind of discussing it?
How were they discussing it? They discussed it with me, but they didn't discuss it in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to them personally and told them, these are the things I'm doing. I'm helping these people. I'm helping this family. They need help. I want to do it. I don't want pay. I'm just going to volunteer and do it.
Yeah, but I guess I'm wondering, I'm sorry to, I'm kind of trying to take you down another pathway.
Right.
I'm wondering though, again, there was an explosiveness in this country. We were on the verge of change, which change is always challenging. So were you working with people that were connected to what was going on here, or were they disconnected because they were in another country and just weren't even really paying attention to what was going here in terms of race relations, and especially with you being the only African American woman, so, and you said that you were sometimes treated well, sometimes not treated well, but by the people that were your, the consulate generals and the ambassadors.
They treated me well.
Okay.
They treated me well, but I went to them with an understanding that that's my boss. I'm going to respect them, but I have a few things that I need to get off my chest that are bothering me, that are bothering Americans where I lived before I came down here, and I need to get it straight, and you need to help me. So they always said yes, but I was on the elevator one time. I think we had secretaries in the State Department, but they weren't going overseas, and I heard this one white officer say, you want somebody to really do your work for you? Get you a black secretary. Now I'm on the elevator with them, but they act like I didn't exist. Get you a black secretary, they can pop it out real fast. I said, oh, that's what they think about us. But that's all they think about us. And I told my girlfriend, and she told me, and then she said, you get on the elevator and you'll see. Because she lives in Jacksonville now, but I got her to go in the Foreign Service. She heard it. And she said, do you think that's normal? And I said, no, but what can we do about it? We got to do something. So I would go to my boss and I told him I heard what happened,
Mhm.
and I don't like it. And I think you need to work on it,
And they said,
okay?
and did they?
They helped me.
Okay.
They helped me to see the people there, how it changed, some of their attitudes.
So they basically opened the door for you to do the additional work that
Right.
you were trying to do in those communities
In
that
those
you were serving.
communities, right.
Okay.
In the offices mostly.
Mhm.
And see, like, in Brazil, they were the one lady that was a millionaire. She had a party and she didn't invite me, and the black officer and his wife were there. And of course, at that time, I couldn't take anybody and be able to take over them, take a man. I couldn't marry a man and bring him as a female at that time. They didn't even have Social Security when I first went in the Foreign Service. So he asked her, this Brazilian woman, she was brown skinned, kind of chunky, and they had a big farm. And he asked her how come I didn't get invited, and she told him because I was black and she had all black servants, so she didn't want to have me there. That was why I didn't get invited, and I was partying myself to death, so I didn't care about it. I said, I don't care whether I go to her party or not, and I had parties myself. Because I had maids, I had servants to fix all my food.
Okay, so you was like totally living the life.
Living the life.
Not thinking at all. Okay, I got it.
And then one time I went out with a blonde wig on purpose. And my hair was real long at that time too. But I had this blonde wig on, and I met this man and we set a date. He came to my house and I made sure I didn't have it on. And he said he was sorry he came by to tell me that he was sick and he couldn't take me out. I thought that was so funny.
That's racism.
That's racism for you, straight up, no doubt.
So let's fast forward to Paris when you had an opportunity to work with NATO. So
That's something
tell us a little bit about that experience, working with those various states and what have you.
Countries.
Well, I mean member state, member countries.
Member countries, which we minus China now. Trump kicked them out. They were one of the best. But it was 14 nations. No blacks secretaries, no black secretaries. I didn't see any black officers either. With no African American officers.